Good evening. I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged.
I wish no ill will of Mr. Shooter. I think he has done good things for his constituents. And he's also made some very, very bad decisions that have injured this institution and put us in this situation. I pleaded with Mr. Shooter to resign, to not force this vote. He would not back down.
A week of drama at the Arizona Capitol ends with a member being expelled. For the first time in decades, lawmakers voted to remove one of their own. Representative Don Shooter is removed from office following a report that claims he harassed fellow lawmakers and lobbyists and created a hostile work environment. But that report was not what sealed Mr. Shooter's fate. Originally, Speaker J.D. Mesner called for censure, not expulsion. Then Thursday morning, Mr. Shooter sent out a letter saying one of the victims was not happy with that report and felt it was inaccurate. Here's what Mr. Mesner had to say about that.
Despite repeated requests from the individual's attorney that Mr. Shooter not do anything to jeopardize the individual's anonymity. So he was not, in fact, standing up for the victim, but rather further victimizing this person.
And Mr. Mesner said that left him and fellow lawmakers no choice. One of those lawmakers is Representative Maria Syms. Now, at what point did you know that this was going to be moving toward expulsion yesterday morning? And tell us, too, what were your thoughts before all of this?
Well, thank you, Dennis. It's always good to be here. This is a very hard time for the Arizona State House and for the entire state and the constituents that we represent. I think that given the report and the nature of the report, many were left with no choice but to choose to expel Mr. Shooter for his misconduct and misbehavior. I, for one, struggled with the decision. There were a lot of things in the report that were difficult to digest. We had a short period of time to look at it. But for me, it was pretty clear that the conduct rose to the level for expulsion.
Now, explain to us, too, explain to the viewers, how his behavior Thursday morning factored into this decision. He was reportedly, allegedly roaming the hallways of the House saying today's a good day for a lynching, a good day for a hanging. He had released that memo that we had talked about to fellow lawmakers. And apparently the Speaker himself found it necessary to go to his office and personally remove a firearm from Mr. Shooter's office.
That is my understanding. I did not have that information in real time. I did not hear those comments. I was made aware of them afterwards. But I think, Dennis, it comes back to good judgment, and a lack of good judgment, I should say, on the part of Mr. Shooter. And certainly that conduct did not help his circumstances and made it very challenging for everyone. There are people I know who were prepared to vote for censure. And then when they heard these actions, they felt they had no choice.
Now, before those actions, what about you personally? Would you have voted for censure or would you have voted for expulsion? Because there was a movement on Wednesday from Representative Kelly Townsend said she was moving forward on expulsion no matter what happened.
I met with a number of my colleagues, and I wanted to take their temperature and get a sense of what their reaction was to the report. My reaction was it did rise to the level for expulsion. Most of my colleagues felt there was enough there were enough things in the report that were vague and inconclusive that they were ready for censure and not ready for expulsion. But I think, as you said, the conduct on the morning with respect to the victim, with respect to the comments made in the House, were enough to put people over into that expel column.
All right. Now, this entire thing started when Representative Michelle Ugenti-Rita told us here on 3 TV that she had been harassed by Mr. Shooter. Now, at that point, the Speaker removed him from his leadership positions pending an investigation because at that time, there were also allegations that Michelle Ugenti-Rita had behaved inappropriately. Even several other lawmakers felt she should also be removed from any committee posts. Now this report found she did not violate, I should say, any ethics rules during Thursday's votes. Several lawmakers expressed concern that we still don't know the entire story. One of them called for an investigation into that. I believe it was Representative Kern. What are your thoughts on this?
I think transparency is always a great thing, and I support Mr. Kern's efforts to get more information. I have spoken to the investigator. The investigator has offered himself up to answer any questions. I said that right now is probably not the time in the wake of the expulsion, but over the next week or so, I think a number of us are going to have questions and may sit down with the investigator to get some clarification on those things. To your point about the misconduct, and I've been saying this repeatedly publicly about the culture down at the House, and I want to say that what happened to Representative Shooter is a cautionary tale to both men and women who choose to take a workplace relationship beyond the bounds of professionalism. And in the report, it's very clear that the relationships were taken beyond the bounds of professionalism. And then when you decide you don't like those overtures, it's very hard to unring that bell, Dennis. And so that's why I think it's very important to have the boundaries clear through a code of conduct. I feel it's a victory for the state of Arizona that our leadership is now working toward a code of conduct.
Okay, now I do want to play a soundbite from yesterday's session. I believe this is some people referring to this investigation. Let's listen to that right now.
And after the events this morning, the letter that came out, and then some comments that were made about the other victim, even though I feel this report is incomplete, I feel like that we only have one choice.
This is not okay. People that make these accusations have done similar things, and you need to knock it off.
Now, you've seen how hard, emotional that was. Why would you want to continue this investigation into one of the victims here? Do you think this would further drag this on? Why not just put an end to it now?
I'm not sure what you mean when you say
when you start talking about Ugenti Rita and maybe looking into her conduct a little bit further.
Oh, I have no plans to conduct more of an investigation. I just am saying that we need to have a code of conduct so that we have clear boundaries so that we don't expose ourselves to circumstances where people are saying that the lines have been blurred and we don't know when you've stepped over the line. And I just want to say about the women that you just showed, these are colleagues of mine. I consider them friends. I was sitting next to Representative Cobb when she made those statements. It was a very emotional time, and you can see that. And it's because I feel that Representative Shooter did not happen overnight. Representative Nutt and I are freshmen. We inherited this problem, and we want to make sure that the culture changes so that those behaviors don't continue.
All right, and we're running out of time right now, but do you think you're seeing a sea change at the legislature? Do you think attitudes are changing? I know I'm down there. A lot of males that work down there. They joke a lot about what they can say and what they can't say, but do you feel there is a change?
I feel that the fact that we're having this conversation is the start of the change. If the expulsion of Mr. Shooter, as heartbreaking as it was for many of those folks that spoke on the floor yesterday, is the catalyst for that change, I'm all for it. And I hope that leadership will include us all in those conversations. We want to be included. We want a culture change. And we want to make sure that when we send our sons and daughters down there to work at the House of Representatives, it is a respectable workplace environment. And we represent the state well.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Representative Maria Syms. Still ahead here on Politics Unplugged, President Trump offers a path to citizenship for the so-called dreamers, but they may have trouble convincing some in his own party. And just ahead, we'll talk with a GOP candidate for Arizona's 8th Congressional District and get his take on immigration reform and whether dreamers should stay or go. We'll be right back.
Happening right here. I want to talk to you. Well, I want to talk to you.
We have a winner.
What are you doing?
Thinking of selling your car? AutoNation has a number to show you. 7. Once we appraise your vehicle, that offer is guaranteed for 7 days. We'll buy your car. No purchase necessary. That's something you can count on. Appraise your car now at AutoNation.com.
Express Flooring is offering deals so monumental, so huge, they can be classified only as presidential. To recognize President's Day, Express Flooring is offering discounts of 40, 50, even up to 66% off your new flooring. That's right. For a limited time, get up to 66% off new carpet, tile, wood laminate, or vinyl plank flooring. Plus, call for a free in-home estimate, a free lifetime installation warranty, and we'll even move your furniture for free. Get presidential savings now. Call Express Flooring.
Express Flooring is the best. Call 800-EXPRESS.
Attention Invocana users. If you or a loved one was taking Invocana and had your leg, foot, or toes amputated, you may be entitled to substantial compensation. Get a local Invocana attorney today. Call the law offices of Lerner and Rowe.
Call 977-1900.
It's the President's Day sale at Conn's Home Plus. Huge deals on furniture with select living room sets at our lowest prices ever. Go to Cons.com to apply for your Yes Money financing and get approved instantly.
You've got a ferocious taste for action and an affinity for Ford Diamond comfort. Fortunately, we satisfy on all accounts.
Ready, set, go. From zero to cash, just like that. Come play Fast Cash every Friday in February and win your share of up to $80,000 in cash and prizes.
Go for it all at the Fort McDowell Casino, Highway 87, 2 miles north of Shea Boulevard.
Thinking of selling your car? AutoNation has a number to show you. 7. Once we appraise your vehicle, that offer is guaranteed for 7 days. We'll buy your car. No purchase necessary. That's something you can count on. Appraise your car now at AutoNation.com.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Joining us now is former state senator and current candidate for Congressional District 8, Steve Montenegro. Thank you very much for joining us here on the program. I want to start with the president now is back to path of citizenship for Dreamers. Where are you on this right now?
So I have never been in favor of amnesty. I've always been against amnesty. What the president's trying to do, of course, is end chain migration, make sure that we build that wall. Making sure that we end that visa lottery program and strengthen e-verify laws. And I think all those things are very necessary, and I would like to see those things as well.
How is this amnesty? I mean, you've got young children here brought through no fault of their own as young children. Why shouldn't they be granted some sort of path to citizenship here? Because they, you know, in many cases, they are as American as you and I right here.
Well, what we have to understand is that we are a country that follows the rule of law. And there are a lot of young kids and families outside of the country as well who have been waiting for 10 or 15 years in a process or in the process to immigrate legally. And so we have to be careful and measure ourselves that we are respecting. If we're going to talk about compassion, we need to be compassionate about the other folks. There's 7 billion plus people on this planet, you know. If tomorrow we said it was okay for them to come, half of them at least would come. And we have to continue to be a country of the rule of law.
But isn't this punishing kids for doing nothing wrong? I mean, if the parents commit a crime, why should the kids suffer?
No, I understand what you're saying, and it is a very emotional conversation. But we can't put Band-Aids on issues as well. You know, this happened 20, 25 years ago, and if we don't fix the problem now, if we don't address it by building the wall, by ending chain migration, by making sure we strengthen e-verify laws. If we don't do these things, then all we're doing is perpetuating the situation ourselves. And look, if we want the rest of the world to respect this country and respect immigration laws and understand that we are a country of the rule of law, then we have to follow them ourselves as well.
And let's talk about the border wall real quick then. Why build the wall? I mean, the latest numbers that we've seen is that border crossings are at historic lows. I think they're down to like 1971 type levels, 46 years. Why spend all this money on more infrastructure down at the border when maybe that money can be better spent elsewhere?
Well, we know that here in Arizona, at least per year, illegal immigration costs us about $2 billion. Nationally, it's over $100 billion. So that is an issue, but we're also dealing with crime across the border. We're dealing with human trafficking, child trafficking, drugs, cartels. So we're talking about national defense as well. And in the time where we live in, we need to make sure that government's #1 job is to defend our borders and to protect the people of this country. And I think that that's where it's aimed at as well.
Okay, now at the top of the segment, we explained that you were a former state lawmaker. You'd served in both houses. What we didn't explain is that you are a former staff member for Congressman Trent Franks. Now, Trent Franks had resigned basically in disgrace after offering $5 million to a staff member of his.
That's allegedly, of course.
Well, he did step down. He hasn't denied it.
Well, he denied that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, look, I understand the circumstances under this, what this was. But Congressman Franks, I think if you know him, anybody that knows him knows that he and his wife couldn't have children. Both of their children are through surrogate children. And he didn't want to drag this through in a way that would hurt his family. He had his wife was in the hospital, and his kids are surrogate children, and he didn't want to drag this, so he resigned. He did that. I think that was the honorable thing to do, to resign. But he was a great congressman for Congressional District 8. He represented the people well with Luke Air Force Base, with national defense issues, with life issues. A very conservative man in his voting record as well. So I think that it's important to understand that for someone like him to say, Steve, this is what the swamp does. This is what the swamp is, and we need people to stand up with a backbone, and him having asked me says a lot as well.
So despite the accusations that what he did, and despite the fact that he resigned, you still think he's a great congressman?
I think he was a great congressman for the Congressional District 8, yes. And his voting record and his service for the last 15 years state that.
Did you hear any rumors about his behavior as a staffer? You'd worked for him for quite a long time as a staff member. You've had to have heard some rumors about his behavior.
No, my work was here in Arizona. I wasn't in D.C. to do anything of that. But again, what we had here, what we did is serve the constituents of District 8. We served, whether it was with veterans issues, military issues, immigration issues. We've always been on the forefront of that, And I think it's important for us to understand the reason Trent called me and asked me to run as well was because he understands what it is like. We need somebody to stand with the president. We need somebody that's going to have a backbone. And someone like me who has, others perhaps have not, who have made pledges and broken them. I have stayed strong and made sure that we do what we told the voters we would do.
Okay, and you've also aligned yourselves, you've taken the endorsement of Trent Franks. You have been promoting that. You have also taken the endorsement of former Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Why would you take the endorsement of a man who was found in criminal contempt of court?
Look, again, the reason Sheriff Joe is supporting me is because I've been so strong against illegal immigration, because I actually voted here in Arizona to fund and build a wall. So I've stood strongly against illegal immigration. I've stood strongly for our men and women that serve, whether it's law enforcement or our military. So that's the reason why men like him, listen, Ted Cruz is endorsing me as well. Congressman Steve King has endorsed me as well. We have J.D. Hayworth, a lot of folks, former president of the NRA. Bob Corbin has endorsed me, and the NRA has given me an A+. That's
sure, but
no one else has
just a couple of
well.
minutes ago, you said that we're a nation of laws.
Correct.
Joe Arpaio ignored the law. He ignored a federal judge's ruling to stop his immigration raids. Why is this different in this case, and you're not willing to extend Dreamers the same type of leeway?
Look, what we found here is that the previous administration, the Obama administration, I think it's very evident right now that it was the most corrupt administration we've had in history. And so what we're finding out is that there was political persecution going on. It was the decision of a judge to find him in contempt, and that's because he disagreed with his oath of office. And again, but the reason these folks are supporting me is because I have stood strong against illegal immigration. I have stood strong for our law enforcement agencies throughout the years.
I get that, but I'd still want to drill down on this point with Arpaio. He was found to have ignored the court order. Why do you think that is okay? Do you think it's okay that he ignored the law?
Sheriff Joe took an oath to the Constitution to uphold the law.
Mm-hmm.
And a judge told him to go against that oath. He chose to stick with the oath to the Constitution. And again, I want to make sure we're talking about issues in Congressional District.
Sure, but you're taking the endorsement, you are promoting this endorsement, you are making it a part of this campaign. So you don't think that Joe Arpaio broke the law when he ignored the federal order?
Look, there was a judge who shouldn't have been ruling, in my opinion. Again, this was all part of what I believe political persecution. because they didn't agree with him, with the most corrupt administration by President Obama, the Obama administration, going after someone that they didn't agree with. But again, he has endorsed me, as have others, because I have been a champion against illegal immigration, because I have stood strong for border security, because I have stood strong to build a wall, and to make sure that we are continuing to be a country of the rule of law, just like everybody else. I have the most conservative voting record by the American Conservative Union, Americans for Prosperity, the Goldwater Institute, and even the NRA has given me an A+ above everybody else. That's the reason these folks are endorsing me and supporting me.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have right now. I wish we could have had more time to discuss a few more issues, but thanks a lot. We'll see you soon here back on the show, but we do have more Politics Unplugged just ahead. Up next, our analysts weigh in on developments at the state capitol. And President Donald Trump tries to win over Democrats and hardline Republicans on immigration. A closer look at what he has to offer just ahead on Politics Unplugged.
Are missing or failing teeth ruining your quality of life? Find out if dental implants are right for you. Call Gasser Dental now to schedule your free 3D scan and consultation.
At Subway restaurants, every day is always a great day. And now it's even better with our Fresh Fit Sub of the Day. Every day of the week, get a different 6-inch sub for just $3.49. Each with 24 grams of whole grains, 2 servings of veggies, and 400 calories or less. Enjoy subs like turkey breast on Wednesday and rotisserie-style chicken on Saturday. So you can make a good choice today and every day with our $3.49 Fresh Fit Sub of the Day. Only at Subway restaurants.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Getting that college education, what are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else? Or will you dare do something different? Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills. The smarts? Yes, you. You could be the teacher I never forget. That'd be cool. Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself?
What are you gonna make of me?
Wake up with a smile. Good Morning Arizona. Weekdays on 3TV.
Getting hurt in a wreck can ruin your day, but speaking to the insurance company before calling us could ruin your life. Pick up the phone and call us first. We'll deal with the insurance company and make sure you get every dollar you deserve.
Call 977-1900.
Also handling criminal and DUI defense cases.
More than 200 million opioid pills are prescribed in Arizona every 6 months.
What's an opioid?
Prescription painkillers like Oxycontin, codeine, or Percocet. Also illegal drugs like heroin.
Only drug addicts misuse opioids, right?
No. Nearly 800 people died last year. Most in their 30s, 40s, and 50s.
If you have unused opioid medications, learn how to properly dispose of them at rethinkrxabuse.org.
We start out with the latest on breaking news coming out of Sky Harbor Airport.
Back to Politics Unplugged. It's now time to talk it out with our partners from First Strategic. Today with us today is Marcus Dellartino and Kurt Davis. Thanks a lot for coming back. And let's start with events at the Capitol last week. Obviously, we saw that Don Shooter was expelled from the State House. First time that's a lawmaker's been kicked out of office in 27 years. First time the House has done it in roughly 70 years. Your thoughts? What stood out about this?
You know, what stood out to me was that the votes were all lined up for censure. It was going to be sort of a textbook procedure. And Don Shooter, who controlled his own fate, did a couple things that morning that pushed that body right over the edge. And, you know, it was a sad day for the House, for the legislature, for Arizona government, but I think ultimately the right decision.
I think you could look at that letter and some of his actions that we discussed earlier that Mr. Shooter did in the morning of that pushed, as Marcus said, lawmakers over the edge. But, you know, had he not done that, you know, there was still a pretty good, decent shot that Mr. Shooter was probably still going to get expelled anyway, correct?
I agree. Yes, I agree with you. There was.
I think out of this comes two things. One is that we see that our system works. There was a peaceful transition that occurred. That doesn't happen all in the entire world, and we should be proud of that. And second is, I think the speaker emerged as a real leader out of this entire series of events.
But, you know, what's also interesting politically is watching the human dynamics that took shape here. And ultimately, at the end of the day, politicians are somewhat self-serving, right? And they wanted to get rid of this problem the most out of anybody. I'm sure the press and the community was tired of talking about it. I know the victims were tired of having to deal with it repeatedly. But the politicians ultimately, at the end of the day, said, look, we're tired of this problem. We want to get down to business. We want to start talking about tax cuts, health care, education, criminal reform, whatever it may be. And the fastest and easiest way to do that is to punch this button and get rid of the problem.
Now, obviously, you know, Mr. Shooter stood up on the House floor, made a defense for himself, literally dropped the mic when he was done, walked out of the building. We did catch up with him at his home afterwards, and he spoke with our Lindsay Reiser. I want to play a clip from that right now.
The truth coming out.
And what is that truth?
Go to my office. There's little black binders. Tell you why this whole thing happened. Just look.
The black binder. DeMarcus, what is all this about?
You know, he has a theory of how this all unfolded. I'm not going to go into the specifics because I haven't read it and I'm not qualified to get into it. But I do think that there are multiple angles involved in this story that have yet to be sort of investigated or talked about. From the purposes of the legislature, from the purposes of the media, and for the purposes of the general public, I think most of this story is over. Don Shooter's been expelled and everybody will sort of go on their merry way.
Conspiracy theories are never a good defense at the end of the day.
I think there's a question of the timing of this binder coming out, too. Why, you know, this investigation has been going on for 3 months.
Absolutely.
Why is this now just appearing on the last day?
It's an ineffective prop.
All right, and last question here. We do want to cover this side. A lot of people voted to expel. It was a 56-3 vote with one not voting. However, Don Shooter and 2 other lawmakers did decide against expelling him from office. What were their reasons?
Well, if you talk to him, and look, this is a really, really heady moment if you're an elected official. Removing another elected official, besides allowing voters to do it, is a heady moment. And I think, you know, you have to respect people having a difference of opinion about who is best to remove elected officials. It's a very fine line between having the public do it in an election versus other elected officials. So I understand the counter argument.
Yeah, it is a big deal, but however, after some of the punishments that the Speaker had already handed out, I mean, he was effectively a non-factor down at the state legislature anyway, correct?
Don Shooter was a non-factor? Well, certainly being stripped of his committee chairman takes everything away, and a possible censure. You know, I won't, look, anytime you're a 1 vote of a 30-vote body or a 60-vote body, I apologize, you're still a factor, but yes, certainly less in power than approach.
And I really do want to hit this real quick. You know, real quick. There was a State of the Union address last week as well. President Trump talked a little bit about immigration. Talked a lot about immigration and DACA. Now, Marcus, do you think a deal can be done here shortly, or do you think that ship has sailed?
I don't think the ship has sailed, and I might be in the minority on this, but I think where there's a will, there's a way. I think that the will is there. And I think that there will be a solution.
As we said last week, there's still an outline for an agreement here, and I actually think that they are going to achieve it.
All right.
By the way, Maria Syms, representative, wanted to make sure her husband heard "Go Eagles."
All right. Well, all right, guys. We'll just end it there on that. But that is all the time we have tonight. Be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.